in the mirror. You're the ones driven by hate and fear. Plunder their culture for $1 spewing progress. While you cross the line, your brains are dead, your hearts are rotten. Truth and history you've forgotten. Preach intolerance with a poisoned tongue, but it's you who's racist and sick. You're cooked, you're funded, you're done. But the bloodline doesn't forget this poison you spread, shallow and dead. Not buying your game, can you see? The world's awake, so take a knee. It's your kind that stains history. Bow down, hear the voices rise. The truth won't fade behind corporate lies. You've drained the soul, now reap the shame. History's watchers know your game.
You don't hate Ubisoft enough. Understand me? Take a look at this, right? They are down immensely yet again. A little bit of an incline back up again, just a smidge, but it is down 4.9% again. And as you can see down here, it's down 75.15% from 5 years ago. As you saw in the intro, it is worth 20% less than what it was worth in the year 2000. Okay? That's where you're at right now. That's where you're at right now. The value of that stock has fallen. Now, again, stock market, not exactly a surefire measure to, explain how things are going. The games market's not doing too well. But rather than acknowledge that that's happening, rather than acknowledge that they've made missteps, rather than acknowledge that perhaps there's a need for change, Marc-Alexis Cote, I think I said that right. We're going to call him Mark for this because I just don't have the energy to spit out all that French nonsense. So, Mark is the head honcho of Assassin's Creed, basically. He might be a little bit higher in the company these days, but that's where he's been since about 2010 when he came on with the company. You'll note that that was off after most of Assassin's Creed's better titles. Anyway, this is what he had to say. He says, Assassin's Creed boss discusses devastating impact of Shadow's diversity and inclusion backlash. Our creative teams face lies, half-truths, and personal attacks online. It's terrible to be on the internet. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. People might see you, and they might commentate on the dumb things that you've said. How about that? So he was at BAFTA shooting his mouth off, and apparently he had this to say down here. So we're going to skip all this pre-contextual stuff that he's complaining about. Like, oh, shifting cultural landscape. These conversations can influence how our games are perceived, but rather than shy away from the conversation, blah, 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 blah. Here we go. All right? So he says, Assassin's Creed has always been about exploring the full spectrum of human history. And by its very nature, that history is diverse. Staying true to history means embracing the richness of human perspectives without compromise. For example, Assassin's Creed Shadows, we highlight figures. Both fictional, like Naue and a Japanese woman warrior, oh my god, Snake Queen. And historical, like Yasuke, the African-born samurai. While the inclusion of a black samurai in feudal Japan has sparked questions and even controversy, Naue, as a fictional character, has also faced scrutiny for her gender. All right, so we're going to address that. Just line by line, okay? And then we'll move on to the next insane thing that he's got to spit out. So here we go. History is not diverse. It's not. It's like only in the last 100 years that people have been getting along together without forcing them together, like slavery, like conquest, like war. Okay? Like that's not, that's hilarious to me. The diversity of history! And you're in Sengoku, Japan. Really? Really? Okay? This is how you know these guys are so far up their own butts and backwards. Just speedballing the fart balloon back there. Just speedballing that fart balloon. You bet. Because guess what? That's not how it worked. It's not how it worked at all. If you paid attention to what happened with Yasuke, is he was not set free by Nobunaga. And if you want to believe the high fantasy, the very high fantasy, that he is some kind of super respected samurai, that the Japanese just decided, oh no, he's not the right skin color. We can't talk about him. But this white guy named Adams, we're going to make sure that we spread him all over the place. We put statues of him all over the place. We're going to give him a Japanese name and a wife and a whole line of historical presence in our expansionist era in order to just screw over that black guy because, you know, screw him, right? I think it was Adams, right? William Adams, right? That was the guy. Yeah. And again, the character in Shogun's Blackthorn, I think, in Shogun is based off of that. So if you want to get like a dramatization of what went on and why William Adams was so important to the Japanese at that time, feel free to watch that show. It's not the history, but it's a pretty close representation of it. And so you're going to take a look at like any other period in history, right? Just take any other period in history, any other single period in history that was before World War I, okay? That preceded World War I. Now, you find me that diversity in history, mister, especially in your good old France. Tell us all about that. Tell us all about how France was so diverse in the past, how the Empire of France was just so golly gosh darn diverse. And I'm sure it was all peaceful diversity, right? And nobody was forced together through slavery, through conquest, through subjugation, right? This is what really annoys me about these people, is that history is great. History is full of a lot of things you can pull from to tell a historical fiction story. Okay? Plenty to do that. But when you sit there and you're like, you know what, these elements that we're insisting are real are not real, but we're going to keep insisting that they're real, and we're going to call anybody who questions that a racist, a bigot, a hater, well, that's where you're wrong. Everybody's wrong when you do that, especially when it comes to history, because history is not something you can guess at. I mean, sure, you get the archaeology stuff going on way back before the days of Noah and stuff like that, but when we're talking about the record of human history as far as diversity goes, it's pretty well documented that that was not the case. That's like the most brain-dead thing you can say about history beyond it didn't happen. Okay? It blows my mind that a person in charge of a game that has such a deep rooting in history would say something so blindly idiotic. So here we go. We'll dig into this a little bit further. Now, the African samurai, not at all the case. Nope, we have disproven this many, many times over. There's an entire playlist on this channel that details the refudiating information that the Japanese government can't even find evidence of this asshole being a samurai, okay? He's a guy. He was a slave. Nobunaga thought he was cool because he was big and black, okay? He was a tall black guy, and Nobunaga had never seen that before. I don't understand where these guys think that this was something that was just cool, right? That Nobunaga brought on a black guy, and he was just like, he's my best friend now. We're gonna go be friends, and you're wrong if you don't like it. You're an idiot if you don't like it. You're gonna die if you don't like it, you know? And he's walking around, he's a bunch of 5'3" guys, and then here's Yasuke at 5'10". Everyone's like, ooh, best friend material. No. In the 1500s, there was exactly a handful of people that may have been from African descent wandering around that place. There may have been a handful of people, maybe. And they were all servants of the Westerners that had come there, okay? They were slaves, servants, some type of indentured, didn't choose to be there, okay? Yasuke did not choose to be there. He was brought there by his masters, okay? By his owners, by his slavers, okay? This is the reality of that man. Nobunaga, in the 3 paragraphs we have on Yasuke, by the way, that's it. That's it. That's all that exists. Everything that Thomas Lockley records about this man's life that's beyond those 3 paragraphs is pure fan fiction, okay? That's where these dorks got this information from. He's in their podcast discussing the information with their official podcast crew that acknowledges the information in his African Samurai book, that's the title of it, in his African Samurai book, was used in the game. So it's just ridiculous. It's on its face. It's stupid to insist upon that. absolutely stupid to insist upon it. And they know it is. They absolutely know it is. That's why they pulled out of the Tokyo Game Show. They didn't want to have to explain to people who are hot-tempered about it, showing up and asking them, what are you doing to my culture? Because these are the people that'll tell you that cultural appropriation is bad. You need to check your privilege, Mr. White Guy. Yeah, that's the people that'll do that. And then here they are, lecturing to the Japanese. Now, they tell us that Naoe, as a fictional character, has also faced scrutiny for her gender. Okay, the only reason why that is because female ninja are known as shinobi, not ninja. They have their own thing. They have their own name. The thing about Japanese culture that someone who may have spent more than a weekend there eating sushi and hanging out at their hotel room, swimming in the pool, you know, getting neat anime stuff down at the overpriced store. Yeah. Most people who pay attention longer than 10 seconds recognize that the Japanese have a word for everything. And when they didn't have a word, they adopted a word. There's English scattered all through their language because they didn't have a word for what had been introduced into their culture, so they took the English word. Okay? So yes, there is not a dual use for ninja. It's not shinobi, it's kunoichi. Sorry, it's kunoichi. Yeah. Just gonna run that through Google right here. Just want to make sure. Sorry. We're on a tight show around here. Kunoichi. Yeah, that's right. Okay, I got it right. Just wanted to make sure. All right, I just want to make sure. Shinobi is what they're called. It's a bigger word. And then kunoichi's for women. Okay? And that's why. It's meant to be a distinction. Not that they're less. Okay? Even though in the time, they absolutely were. You have to understand. Outside of our pleasant little video game world, outside of our fun little social media, reality is there reminding you that a man is stronger than a woman on average. Just on average. 9 out of 10 times, a man is going to be able to overpower a woman. 9 out of 10 times. Okay? Female ninja were mostly used for what females are typically used for in this regard. Seduction. Yes, they were trained. Yes, they were incredibly skilled. But the male ninjas were not trained in seduction. No. They were trained in how to do a lot of things you can't say on YouTube, okay? But, yeah. Now, the lady ones had special training because, again, how does that work? How do you get close to a target? Well, you appeal to them. And how do you do that? Well, women kind of have universal appeal, especially back in those days. So, when she faces scrutiny for her gender, it's because you guys insist that she's a ninja when she's a kunoichi. And you guys brag about your authenticity. You were so proud of it, you know. But, and in reality, too, the Japanese are confused why Yasuke's even in the game. You got to remember, he's not even taught in history classes. You got to go to college to hear about this guy. If you run across him anywhere outside of that, it's because somebody's trying to make money off of a dead black slave. That's right, off of a dead African slave. When you see products out there after that have Yasuke featured in them, that's what they're doing. That's right. These French guys, Alexis Cote, our good friend here that's complaining about all the things under the sun. Yeah, that guy. Racist. I guarantee you. I guarantee you. In fact, let's talk about that. Let's just jump right into that because that's a wonderful topic. That is just a very, very, very deep topic that we can get into. So as we had it here, Yellow Flash pointed this out. He says, next time, Ubisoft, instead of hiring dollar store Japanese consultants, hire one that actually knows their stuff, instead of experts in sex and communism. And that's who they brought on. They brought on someone that was obsessed with cataloging the Buddhist monks' homosexual relationships, and they passed that person off as a Japanese cultural expert. The brain damage is amazing. So here you go. This right here, you have Dumont on the left and Benoit on the right. And these are the two, it's the creative director and then the design, I believe the game design director, respectively. These two are. And they went over and talked to Famitsu last year about Assassin's Creed. And that one of the things they told the Japanese reporter to his face was that we were first looking for our samurai, someone who could be our non-Japanese eyes. Do you remember when we had those non-Italian eyes? Do you remember when we had those non-American eyes. Remember when we had those non-French eyes? Do you remember that? Do you remember when we had those non-Viking eyes? Do you remember that? Assassin's Creed has always been about a son of the land, a native-born son of the land that is imperiled by the Templar, defending it against the Templar. Okay? It's not about the diversity of history. Never has been about that whatsoever, at all, because when you look through most of the characters in the game, guess where most of the history's been focused? That's right, in and around Europe and Europe's influence on the world. So thanks for playing. Appreciate it. But, yeah. So they went out and they deliberately told Famitsu that they were looking for somebody to tell the story that wasn't Japanese, because Japan doesn't get to defend their own land. That's right. Not one of those teeny tiny little Japanese guys that was so inferior to Yasuke. So inferior to Yasuke. Not one of them could defend their lands. Toyotomi couldn't defend his lands. That's right. Nobunaga couldn't defend his own lands. None of his men were capable of it. There was no great hero in the land of Japan that could have risen up to thrust out the Templar. No. They had to bring in an outsider, a gaijin, to save them because they were incapable of doing it themselves. And that's what these dicks have provided for us. I'm sorry, I'm not pulling punches anymore. These guys are useless. As soon as Ubisoft closes, I want these guys in bread lines. I don't want any cushion. I don't want no golden parachute. I want their contracts burned in front of them for this. It gets worse. Let's go. Here's IGN's coverage. Now, you remember when this gameplay footage came out about Yasuke, and he's tromping through the town. Everybody's bowing down to him. He's crushing heads like Gallagher with watermelon at his show. But guess what? To add insult to injury, in the 1500s, Ubisoft thought it would be smart to stick a hip-hop soundtrack behind Yasuke's battle footage.
Protector turned persecutor. Greed cannot rule this village. Not while I have breath in my lungs and a blade in my hand.
I said kill him.
You hear the drum machine? You hear the drum machine? Let's go back and take a listen to the drum machine in Sengoku era
Rule
Japan.
this village. Not while I have breath in my lungs and a blade in my hand.
I said kill him.
And there it is, just like that, okay? Now, check this out, though. You may have been like, wait a minute, that voice sounds kind of forced. That sounds like a fake accent. So let's just listen. Okay, so these guys are talking to him on the streets. Now we're going to hear Yasuke respond. This is going to be Yasuke's voice that happens here.
Protector turned persecutor. Greed cannot rule this village.
That's a really forced Asian accent. That was really bad when those aliens in Star Wars did it. But apparently, when this guy from Zimbabwe does it, that's right. This is the voice of Yasuke right here, talking about his work on Antebellum. And I just want you to take a listen. Just want you to take a listen to how this guy sounds.
You know, it literally became a spiritual experience. Being Zimbabwean, coming, to America, and, you have this nostalgic feeling where it's like, it almost felt like a rite of passage for me.
Yeah, rite of passage. Guess what? You don't have a Japanese accent. So isn't that kind of weird that they hired a guy to fake an Asian accent, a very strong fake Asian accent, by the way, to walk around smashing the heads of Japanese, okay? That's what they thought would be tolerable, would be cool, would appeal to the kids. That's right. That's right. That's who we're dealing with. That's the brain trust over at Ubisoft that says this kind of stuff. It says Assassin's Creed delay is necessary to change the narrative of Ubisoft's inconsistency in quality. We only have one shot. This game is still going to be plagued with bugs. Apparently, they were worried that it was going to get Assassin's Creed Unity. I think that was the one where the faces just kept disappearing. You had floating dentures and eyeballs. And that was a bad idea. That really didn't go well. So apparently, that was what the game looked like. It had those kind of glitches in it. Because if they're going back and working this hard, and they're talking about Unity, well, you don't have to be a mathematic genius to put those numbers together, now do you? But again, we'll digress back into this right here. So he goes on to talk about this other stuff, and I just don't care at this point. I'm so angry about this stuff. I'm not sweating mad yet, but I'm getting there, believe me. So Games Radar captured this brilliant quote from him and says, Assassin's Creed Shadow lead shuts down attacks driven by intolerance over games Black, Samurai, and Woman Warrior, condemns personal attacks against the devs. Well, I'm sorry. You hired a bunch of racists that don't view Japanese people as humans. It's that simple. It is absolutely that simple. You Ubisoft, you, Alexis, what are you? Marc-Alexis Cote and Dumonte and Benoit, you three at least do not see Japanese people as human. 100% you do not accept the validity of their human souls. You would not do this to another human being's culture if you had a shred of respect for any single person walking the streets there. You understand me? In no way, shape, or form, if you had respect for the Japanese, would you do this to them? Would you emasculate them in such a way? I'll remind you that they deliberately make everybody in Japan look microscopic next to Yasuke. And it wasn't that crazy of a size difference back in the day either. Nobunaga had plenty of men that were the same height as him. What made Yasuke attractive to Nobunaga was the fact he was black. He tried scrubbing the black off of him 3 different times. It's in the 3 paragraphs we have about Yasuke. Nobunaga couldn't figure out why he was black. He had his servants scrub Yasuke almost to the bone, to the point where he was bleeding, to get the black off of him. But no, he's a hero. He's a hero. Everybody loved him. They're all bowing to him through the streets. This is what annoys me. This man had a rather miraculous life when you consider what actually happened to him. Okay? He had a pretty extraordinary life. Terrible that he was enslaved. Absolutely. I'm not discounting that at all. But the man lived an incredible life. And this is the only chapter we know about for sure. We don't know if he fought anywhere else. We don't know if he served anywhere else. We don't know what happened to him before he came, because we only have 3 paragraphs about him. I'm over this. I'm so tired of being called a hater because I don't like the idea of a real living man having his life stolen from him and being turned into a birthday party clown for the amusement of French racists. You understand me? If you are a black American watching this, I defy you to not feel insulted by this shit. Okay? I defy you to not be absolutely disgusted to your bone that this is what the French think of you. Sticking hip-hop in the middle of this. Forced Asian accents. You don't have an identity to them. Yasuke doesn't matter to them. The reality of an African slave being handed a sword in Japan, even just being a servant to the Lord in 1500, is not miraculous enough for them. They had to steal his name and rewrite his life in order to make him cool enough for them. He's dead. That's a dead African slave that they're deciding to pillage for more money. I'm just ramping myself up. That's what's happening here. I'm gonna get to the point where I punch my freaking camera. So I'm done. I'm absolutely done. If you're done, hit like and subscribe because we're gonna go full Scorched Earth on Ubisoft here on out. I'm done. They had a chance to learn a lesson. This delay was supposed to teach them something. It hasn't. They have tripled down now. Guess what happens? It's Scorched Earth now, Ubisoft.